Warm welcome to all the viewers and a good evening. I'm Dev. I head sales and delivery support operations of TCS Ion Digital Manufacturing Division within TCS. TCS Ion is actually a strategic business unit of TCS focused on getting organizations going with their digital transformation initiatives and helping them realize value from this transformation. We are glad and we are honored to have two of the most accomplished experts from the Indian agricultural economy with us today, Dr. Chengappa and Dr. Nagaraj. It's my pleasure to invite both of you on this webinar program, Dr. Chengappa and Dr. Nagaraj. A quick note of introduction on both the eminent experts who are with us. Dr. Chengappa, a leading agricultural economist of the country, he served as the Vice Chancellor of University of Agricultural Sciences in Bangalore, and he was also the National Professor of Indian Council of Agricultural Research at Institute for Social and Economic Change in Bangalore. He was also a member of the Working Group on Agricultural Marketing, Planning Commission of India, for preparing the 12th five-year plan document. Dr. Chengappa's international experience includes being a consultant at IFPRI Washington. He was a socio-economist with IPGRI in Rome, in Italy. He was an FAO with the regional office in Bangkok. Dr. Chengappa was also a visiting scientist with IRRI in Manila. He was a facilitator for the International Course on Agricultural Marketing with DSC Germany. And last but not the least, he was the visiting scientist at the University of Reading and University of Wales in the UK. Currently, Dr. Chengappa is an independent director on the board of Tata Coffee Limited. He is also on the board of Tasty Bite Eatables Limited and Samagri Tech Limited. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Chengappa.
Thank you.
Dr. Nagaraj, he was the ICSSR National Fellow affiliated at ISCC. He worked at the ICRISAT as a principal economist. Dr. Nagaraj was also the professor and head Department of Agricultural Economics at the University of Agricultural Sciences in Bangalore, and he had pioneering role in international research projects with the sponsorship from USAID, IFPRI, from the World Bank, and of course with the Indian Council of Agricultural University at the university. So, warm welcome to you, Dr. Nagaraj. It's a pleasure to have both of you on our program today.
Thank you.
So, as we get started, I'll just go across to Dr. Chengappa to have his initial opening remarks on the topic of the day, on the Indian agriculture sector and how we can make a big impact on it. So, Dr. Chengappa, please share your views on the opportunities for the Indian agricultural sector in the world market and what our current share is right now.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Dev Narayan, for setting the tone for discussion as well as for a nice introduction on the topic of how Indian agricultural economy can capture the world market. I must say the Indian agriculture is one of the biggest and the second largest in the world next to China. And India, a vast country, if you take in terms of the cultivated area, with 15 agroecological regions from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, as the opportunity, or we can grow all kinds of crops, whether dryland crops, whether arid crops, arid zone crops, or temperate or hilly region. So we have the opportunity to grow all kinds of crops throughout the year, unlike other parts of the world. For example, in the Europe, you cannot grow crop throughout the year. The cropping season is hardly 6 months. Then India is the largest producer of milk, spices, pulses, tea, cashew, and jute. And also we are the second largest producer of wheat, fruits, vegetables, sugarcane, cotton, etc. I must mention that India is self-sufficient in agriculture, except for we are importing pulses and oil seeds, which are required for the domestic consumption. Our agriculture is trade surplus. Our exports are to the order of US $43.4 billion, and imports are about $28 billion. So we are export surplus. And our agricultural sector, we produce 295 million tons of food grains, 320 million tons of horticulture crops, and 208 million tons of milk. Similarly, sugarcane and other crops. And today we account for about 2.27% of the total agricultural exports of the world. And as far as the India is concerned, agricultural exports form about 10% of the total exports. And that's why we find, this is possible because we have developed very good value chains for commodities like rice, bovine meat, and especially plantation crops. That is why we have made a big mark in exports as well. Overall, as I indicated, we are self-sufficient, and there is you have seen even during the COVID pandemic, there was no shortage of agricultural commodities, but there was some problem of supply chain, causing disruption in the distribution of especially food grains in certain pockets. That way, the Indian agricultural economy is vibrant and it's really moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Chengappa, for your opening remarks and sharing a lot of data points on how we are the second largest agricultural producer. Thank you so much. Dr. Nagaraj, if I can come to you, based on your research and experience in the agriculture sector, can you please elaborate how Indian agriculture can compete with the world market?
Thank you, Dev, for your nice introduction and for question. India represents one of the most biodiversified countries of the world. It has a distinct comparative advantage to produce many commodities. But the concern is really the quality. So we need to focus on quality and sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which are really hurting our exports. For example, we are the largest producers of milk, but we are not able to export milk because milk is hand milking is very commonly practiced in India. Similarly, we have huge potential for mango, but mango weevil is a problem that has to be addressed. Similarly, we have some like grapes. So in case of grapes, the pesticide residue is a problem. So these are very specific. We have a huge scope, but we need to address the quality standards of the international market. Similarly, we need to exploit the potential all through the country. For example, now only 6 states are contributing to 60% of the value of the exports. So in another remaining is like a sleeping giant. For example, entire eastern India, like Bihar, Orissa, West Bengal. So this is a very potential area where we need to focus. Secondly, Himalaya, this one, another area where we have very like Indo-Gangetic plain, which is a very fertile area. And we need to exploit here the agriculture potential. So we need to harness this potential for export market. So this is another area where we need to focus on quality, branding, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. And we need to shift towards high value, this one exports. As Professor Chengappa told, only our export constitute 10% of the total this one in the agriculture, this one export. But the share of high value and value added products is less than 15% of the total this one exports. So here is a potential to diversify our export basket towards high value commodities. So right now what is happening, we are exporting more raw, semi-processed and marketing in a bulk. So therefore it is not that high value added. So here is another area to exploit more. And we need still huge opportunity for input players. For example, this I've forgotten to mention that input players here, I mean to say that lot of scope for exporting of organic inputs like oil cakes, for example, neem cake, pesticides. These are all very, for example, Japan is a leading country, so which needs lot of these organic inputs. Similarly, fortified vermicompost is another branded commodity, so which has a huge scope for exports. So organic inputs are, and also indoor plants, another area where we need to export. Plants and seed industry is another area where we can tap or we can harness the market. So the private sector engagement in processing branding is very, very important. And this has to be focused highly. So in order to capture our world markets. So we need to invest in end-to-end value chains, particularly in fruits and vegetables, to capture the world market.
Thank you, Dr. Nagaraj. I think you talked about the importance of increasing our high-value exports among various other things, which is very critical to our economy. Thanks for your opening remarks. Well, I think it's something for us to be happy about, and comforting to us that while during the COVID phase, while the entire industry was down, was degrowing, agriculture was the sector which had a positive growth. I think it was more than 3% overall in the country. So, Dr. Chengappa, agriculture continues to be a very important sector in the Indian economy. Given its size, what kind of transformation is taking place in this sector?
Yeah, Dev, you are right. The agricultural sector is highly resilient, and as you mentioned, during the COVID period, when the whole of the economy contracted by 24%, we could see a lot of green shoots in the Indian agriculture, and recording a positive growth rate of 3.4%, and that is likely to continue in the coming, the whole of the year. But you also mentioned that agriculture is an important and a very huge sector in the Indian economy. And as we all know, nearly 14% of the GDP is derived from agriculture, in which nearly 58% of the total employment is provided by agriculture. And as I indicated earlier, 10% of the total export is constituted from agriculture. But if you overall you look at it, this appears to be an inefficient model wherein 15% of the population producing, 15% of the population producing, 58% of the population producing 14% of the GDP. That is why the agriculture sector still we find a lot of poverty. The per capita income is much lower in agriculture. And this has resulted in a lot of people moving from agriculture to other sectors. In fact, during the last 10 years, nearly 5 million people have left agriculture and moved to other sectors. Secondly, if you really look at it, Indian agriculture is transforming from subsistence to commercial nature. You find a lot of agribusiness activities, processing, transportation. You take anything, even retailing. You find it is becoming highly commercial, and agribusiness has emerged as an important business in our economy. And we also see that the Indian agriculture, after the WTO, because India is a signatory to the WTO, we have complied to the WTO stipulations in terms of market access, in terms of reducing the subsidy, etc. And that appears to be paying dividends as we are able to increase our exports to a greater extent. And now, if you really look at it, the Indian agriculture is moving from primary to secondary agriculture. This is very important. If the farmers continue to produce only involved in production, they will not be able to improve their income. They have to be part of the secondary agriculture, wherein value addition takes place, and they should get the benefit of this value addition. They should be part of it. And also, if you really look at the other transformation, there are a lot of policy changes. In the last 3 months, we have been discussing about the 3 recent acts implemented by the central government. One on reforming the regulated market, other related to the contract farming, third related to the Essential Commodity Act. This will certainly help in transforming the agriculture sector to a great extent, because most of the barriers have been removed, and there is an opportunity for expanding the agribusiness activities. In fact, what we can really think is how to employ the population moving out of agriculture in these secondary activities, so that the agriculture sector becomes much more, generating more of GDP, so that the per capita income of the people in agriculture can be improved. So this kind of the transformation has become imminent, and it will continue much more in the years to come.
Absolutely, Dr. Chengappa, you were on the dot when you said that there are a lot of support from government and various other sectors coming in, but what the priorities are. So, Dr. Nagaraj, if I can come to you, as Dr. Chengappa also pointed out, there is a secondary, farming which he was talking about. So, what are the best options for increasing agricultural production while simultaneously reducing its contribution to greenhouse gas emissions? Because this, we all know, is a top priority for not only for this sector but for the world at large. Dr. Nagaraj.
Okay, Dev. Precisely, there are two domains. One is on dryland or rain-fed ecosystem. So another is irrigated ecosystem. So the dryland ecosystem constitutes bulk of the area. About 60% of the total gross cropped area is under the dryland agriculture, which is exposed to climate shocks and vagaries of monsoon, etc. So here we need to develop and design most sustainable and climate resilient healthy food system. So mostly here these crops are low input intensive, and also they are low carbon footprint crops. For example, millets, dryland coarse cereals, pulses, oilseed. These are all low resource intensive crops. And at the same time, these cereals also support livestock, which is complementary to others. Byproducts of the dryland agriculture being effectively utilized for the livestock industry. And the dryland cereals, especially millets needs a sort of big fillip in terms of value chain, improved value chain or integrated value chain for Indian millets, and also branding. These are all future nutraceutical crops, which is loaded with micronutrients and other rich nutritive aspects in these millets. Especially millets crops are very good for addressing malnutrition and also iron deficiency, etc. These are. So we need to enable the technology adoption, and access to inputs and output markets is very important in dryland agriculture. That is one area. And this dryland, the biggest advantage is they are less input intensive and they need less external inputs. The reduction of carbon footprint, or what is called greenhouse gases. The another important area, topical area, is irrigated agriculture. Here problem is here. So in irrigated agriculture, we need to diversify the cropping pattern towards high value horticulture crops which require less water. So the sugarcane and rice occupies more than 1/3 of this gross cropped area, and they consume more than 70% of the water. These two crops alone. So thereby, another dimension is about 70% of the total irrigated area is under groundwater irrigation. And to pump groundwater irrigation, we need a lot of energy. Thereby, so to the fossil fuels or relying on energy for pumping groundwater is also a biggest environmental threat. And we are also exporting rice. So rice is it requires a huge amount of water to produce. And when you export rice, virtually we are exporting water also. That is nothing but ecological capital. So so that is another way. So we need to promote efficiency in rice management, especially because rice produces a lot of methane. So that is a greenhouse gas. Therefore, So we have to avoid puddling. Instead of that, to go for most scientific method of cultivation like aerobic rice, tree method of cultivation. There are several ways we can reduce 60 to 70% of the water in those. So that is water energy nexus. That means efficient use of technologies and efficient use of energy, both are very important. And also we need to discourage growing of rice under groundwater irrigation. That is very, very important. And we need to focus secondary agriculture, which is a game changer again, so which provides a lot of employment. Then we need to develop value-added uses for many byproducts of agriculture, because agriculture produces large, huge biomass, and we need to set up some of these power plants in order to produce or generate power by using these byproducts like sugarcane bagasse or rice bran, and also for special commodities like bamboo, for example, which has multiple uses, so to be encouraged. And there are other disruptions also. Government commitment toward doubling farmers' income. So we need to enhance the productivity. We need to use resources more judiciously, especially scarce resources, and also we need to cut down the cost of production so that farmers the income or the value generated per unit of resource is maximized. Then we need to bring out institutional innovations also, so without this one affecting the major environmental threats. So in my opinion is the cost-effective mitigation measures without affecting the production, productivity, etc. We need to manage the nutrients, balanced use of nutrients, then use of scientific tools for what is called the soil testing, soil health analysis, etc. And also management of water, especially for growing rice and sugarcane. These are the areas where we need to more effort to bring change.
Right, Dr. Nagaraj, thanks for your information on that. There's no better time than now, where a lot of farm laws and farm reforms are happening, and in addition to the efforts of the sector as such, and of course the government, very important critical points like what you mentioned along with Dr. Chengappa, I think it come into play right now. So you talked about the various options in terms of the crops, and also the key role that irrigation plays and how we need to manage the water resource, which is so critical. Thanks so much. Moving on to Dr. Chengappa, let me talk about the role of the institution in this whole sector. As agriculture is highly knowledge intensive and institutionally determined, what is the effectiveness of different novel extension strategies, and how best these strategies can empower the farmers in their decision making? Dr. Chengappa.
Yeah. Mr. Dev, you really mentioned agriculture is changing. Agriculture is more of science, and it's more of market driven these days. And as such, knowledge is a very key input in both in production and marketing, because in production we need a lot of information for input management. In marketing, a lot of inputs on product management. So both on the input and the output side, we need knowledge. And as Nagaraj really mentioned, we need to have appropriate technologies for the farmers. And this involves technology development, technology refinement, technology transfer. So it is location specific, and there are a lot of efforts that are going on, but most of these efforts are in the public domain, like the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, state agricultural universities, and the allied department like Department of Agriculture, Horticulture, Animal Husbandry, etc. But in certain sectors, private sector has also come up. Like if you see the hybrid seed production for vegetables, they have come out with very good technology. And this is high time we must really work out novel extension methods so that the technology, whether produced in private sector or in the private sector, reaches the farmers so that they can adopt technology, they can improve their productivity, they can improve their profit to a great extent. And we have seen there are many outreach models we have tried, such as farm and home visits. We have the training and the training and visits that visits, that is then the farmer field school. Then there are group approach. They are using a lot of ICT as a group approach to transfer technology to the farmers, because touching individual farmers is sometimes very difficult. Then also we have what Dr. Nagaraj was mentioning, the technology for dry-land agriculture, technology for irrigated agriculture. But now we need, for example, transfer of technology in a changing situation wherein a lot of intensive agriculture like protected agriculture and the use of biotechnology, etc., is seen in a big way in agriculture. If you see a country like Netherlands, it is one of the biggest now. I think that is the fourth biggest exporter of agricultural commodities in the world. That was possible because they are using the best of the technology, all sensor controlled technology. So the per unit production is very high, and they produce the commodities with precision, following precision farming. And that is why they are able to capture the world market. This is a very important one. And our extension should be tuned to transfer this kind of technology to farmers if you really want to compete in the overseas market. Otherwise, we will not be able to compete. The second is, we have seen a lot of other nanotechnology is being used, and the blockchains are used both in production and marketing. These are very useful because we have to use the resources optimally. We have to place our products as required in the international market, like traceability is a major issue, which is possible if you use blockchain. So our extension model should adopt to see that these kind of technologies are transferred to the farmers. In the process, the farmers have to be well trained, in this technology. Otherwise, we cannot produce. And also, for example, we have seen, the capacity building at the present level of the huge number of farmers is a difficult task. So we'll have to modify the extension in such a manner. We have to use, what you call the digital agriculture. Bring the farmers to the digital revolution in agriculture, so they can get the best of the technology. At the same time, they can get connected to the emerging markets in the world. Now, unless you use what you call e-agri or digital agri, we cannot go for, even including big data, we cannot go for smart farming. What Nagaraj was mentioning, climate resilient agriculture, in the smart farming, all these has to be used. But I just wanted to mention, saying that, see, for example, agribusiness is emerging in a big way. Our present extension system is not able to provide what is called as the market-led extension. We need more of extension in the agribusiness sector, so that the farmers can decide what to produce, when to produce, how to produce, where to market also. These kinds of things are made available. Our farmers will be best placed. So there is a need for reorienting our agricultural extension with the changing scenario of agricultural production and agricultural marketing in the world. And I'm sure, we must, both private and public sector should be involved, because both have, a lot of positive points which can be put together, so that as you indicated while introducing the topic, we have to use novel approaches in extension so as to benefit the farmers.
Dr. Chengappa, well, you mentioned about the use of technology in agriculture and how it can really help the farming community take it to the next level. Like big data or blockchain. And let me reassure you, sir, it's not only for the agriculture sector, for business at large, for the world at large, blockchain is the way forward. You hit the nail on the head, I would say. So you were on the spot. Dr. Nagaraj, let me ask you another important aspect. What are the environmental and ecological issues that need to be addressed in order to bring about sustainability in agriculture? Hello, Dr. Nagaraj. Are you able to hear me, Dr. Nagaraj?
Now I'm hearing. Okay.
Right.
Sorry, I missed it.
Not a problem. I was asking your suggestions, your views on the environmental and ecological issues that need to be addressed with the objective of bringing out sustainability in agriculture, Dr. Nagaraj.
Yeah. So green revolution in India not only brought the food security and nutritional security, at the same time it has also generated some negative external effects on the agriculture ecology, ecosystems. So the burning issue is too much chemicalization of agriculture. That means the chemical load is so much, which has created a lot of ill effects, especially on fauna, flora, on microclimate. So a lot of nitrate pollution, groundwater being polluted. The biggest problem which has caused by application of water, especially the surface water, is land degradation. So the surface water or the canal water is highly subsidized. So the scarcity value is not reflected in the market. Therefore, so farmers are using this water recklessly. That means not more efficient use of water is practiced, especially in surface irrigation. That has created salinity, alkalinity, drainage are all problems. On the other side, now the so-called minor irrigation has become major irrigation, groundwater irrigation. Okay, this is most controlled irrigation. So due to access to technology, farmers started exploiting this resource. Now the groundwater depletion is another important problem which is focusing. And farmers growing rice under groundwater irrigation and exporting virtually, that is the ecological capital. So the irrigation induced land degradation is another biggest burning issue which is causing in Indian agriculture. And as I earlier indicated, the most water guzzling crops like rice and sugarcane, they are the real culprits. So they are also bringing a lot of land degradation problems. And now the agriculture is highly energy intensive, especially 28 to 30% of the total energy consumption in India goes towards agriculture sector. So this to produce this one, so coal burning only, again burning, and we are so contributing to the greenhouse. So that means that the energy management is also very equally important. Now, so coming to this, the climate change is another important threat, which is a really, I think, especially in rain-fed agriculture, which is causing a disaster like frequent droughts, floods, etc. And in the process, we also lost the biodiversity, which is very vital for our what is called genetic system. So some of the solutions for these problems, we need to focus more on improved land and water management, especially land management, which includes integrated pest and disease management, integrated soil nutrient management, watershed development. Groundwater recharge is another important area, because most cases the extraction rates are far exceeding the recharge rate, thereby causing overdraft. So in order to address this problem, we have to invest more on recharging groundwater, and more efficient irrigation technologies like drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, use of plastics in agriculture is very, very important. Because now the micro irrigation, so-called drip and sprinkler, they occupied a very, very insignificant proportion. For example, it occupies around 10% of the total irrigated area is under micro irrigation. Huge scope to bring about reforms here, in especially efficient use of irrigation water. Then we have to improve energy use management. For example, go for solar pump sets, solar-based energy, wind-based energy. So these are all, we have to effectively use and bring out efficiency in energy use in agriculture. And another concern is we need to create what is called appropriate agroforestry system, which acts as a carbon sinks. That means they absorb a lot of carbon dioxide and store in root, leaf, everywhere in the biomass. So ultimately, we need to diversify our land use in such a way that, so we need to create green technologies and benefit on account of this. And we need to focus more on sustainable inputs, bio inputs, recycling of agriculture waste, residues, crop rotation, appropriate management practices, good agriculture practice. All cumulatively we need to manage in order to address these ill effects or so-called externalities, negative externality, external effect. These impose cost on the society, cost on other users, and intergenerational issues. For example, next generation, so some of these resources may be completely eroded or depleted. So it is just, for example, open wells becomes a museum pieces for next generation. So conservation of resources is equally important.
Right. Very critical points brought about by you, Dr. Nagaraj. Thanks for that. I'll come back to you, Dr. Chengappa. Another important thing is on the profitability of the farmers. Now, given the predominance of the small holdings and with the growing market volatility, and the risk of farmers, how to make agriculture more profitable for the farming community?
Yeah.
Dr. Chengappa.
Yeah, thank you, Dev. It's a very right question, because the Indian agriculture, if you see the agrarian structure, we find it is dominated by small and marginal farmers who own more than 86% of the holdings. And the average size of farming in India is reduced to 1.08 hectares. The recent, if you see the NSO survey, so you can imagine this process will further continue because of the existence of law of inheritance, and also amending the act in which the women is also now can get the share of the land. So due to the existence of law of inheritance, subdivision and fragmentation of the land is taking place. It will continue. As such, the Indian agriculture continues to be, the scale is going to be very small. So if you really want profitability in the Indian agriculture, we'll have to think of business models inclusive of small farmers. If you leave out the small farmers, certainly the agriculture will not continue. So we'll have to come out with models, maybe kind of aggregation, or they come together like farmer producer companies, which is being promoted in a big way by the government, or farmer producer organizations, etc. Because of this, even the Companies Act has been amended so that they can pool their resources, pool their output, and get the economy of the scale. This has to be started. And moreover, if you really analyze, for most crops in India, because of the low productivity and also the small scale production, what you find is the productivity is very low. And as such, the cost of production is very high, which makes us very not competitive in the world market. In fact, certain times we discuss for certain commodities, why don't we import the commodities, because the cost of production here is very high. This kind of thinking is also emerging. So what we see, this is mainly due to the fact that the farmers buy their inputs in the retail market, paying the highest price, and they sell their produce in the primary wholesale markets, what is called as mandis, where they realize the wholesale price. So there's a double whammy. They get, they have to pay high price, they receive lower price. As such, for example, their cost of production is very high. Added to this, the low productivity puts us in a very disadvantageous position. And what I see, for example, what we find is this high cost. For example, if you see, currently India is one of the leading exporter of sugar in the world. But for every kg of sugar exported, we provide 10 rupees subsidy. This is a very, very peculiar situation, and sugarcane is a water guzzler, as indicated by Nagaraj. Should we really do this? These are the questions that comes to our mind, and in order to do this, we'll have to convince the farmers. For example, when I started my introduction, I just mentioned that there's an overcrowding in the Indian agriculture. because there are 50% of the people producing 14% of the income. So that we need to withdraw people from agriculture. But where to? Because they don't have the skill sets. In fact, I use the right word. There is an overcrowding in agriculture. We need to selectively withdraw people from agriculture and should take them to agri-based industries or rural industries, so that the sector as a whole contributes higher. This has to be done, and this has to be done with some policy changes and also training the farmers, because even at the village level you find a lot of now educated people, but they need right kind of training. Then of course you also raised about the risks in marketing, production risk in marketing, which can be really countered through crop insurance or following climate smart agriculture, which Dr. Nagaraj was mentioning. Then some institutional aspects that are involved for linking the producers to the market, and the market risk also should be reduced, because the farmers can go for contract farming, which has now been rationalized by the amended act, and they also can also go for using right kind of market information in decision making. In fact, the small farmers, one problem is, we must have seen, the small farmer mindset is he wants to produce his own requirement of crops. This he has to come out. For example, he wants to produce food grains. Even if it's a surplus, he realizes much lower return, and ultimately his income will be lower. In fact, he should go for, because of the availability of the family labor, he has to go for high value crops like vegetables and other things, so that his return will be much higher. But this is a mindset. For example, if he has some little water, a small acre, he thinks that he should be self-sufficient, and the self-sufficiency is only in terms of food grains. This is another thing. That's why I mentioned the reduction of market risk, the reduction of production risk has to be given top priority. And I think the agribusiness model should take care of both. In fact, we have seen the advantages of contract farming, which has been practiced, and in many regions, the farmers who have gone for contract farming, they have benefited a great deal. First is there's an assured market. Second is they get the working capital, because it's very difficult to get the working capital. Even to get the working capital, they have to go to the money lenders or the commission agents or the traders, borrow at a very high interest rate. This kind of adaptation will help small farmers to get into agribusiness and produce in a systematic manner, so that they can improve their productivity and they can emerge and they can generate profits in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Pulling people out from agriculture, putting them into other areas of the value chain, because everybody is going into primary farming, and I think that point was very important. So I think the institutions and government, all of them need to work hand in hand in order to bring about this transformation. Thanks so much, sir. Dr. Nagaraj, I will come to you for the final question, of course. In terms of what your views are to transform the Indian agriculture sector as a vibrant sector to emerge as a major player in the world market. Dr. Nagaraj.
Okay, Dev, thank you. So in terms of human resource, we have a large workforce which can be gainfully employed. So that is our major strength. And that is we need to bring about demographical change here. Then we have a very effective R&D, research and development, and effective research system to support our technological drive. And in the process, we have to make the export more competitive. That means we need to enhance the productivity, quality, and export competitiveness is very, very important. So India produces many commodities. That means from rice to fruits, vegetables, but in terms of export share is very, very limited. Therefore, we need to infuse competition in agriculture and also export. Now, for many agriculture commodities, we have very favorable terms of trade, especially for export. Now, we have to utilize this opportunity to promote our exports. Now, some of the strategies I would like to mention here is that we need to identify what are the potential enterprises for different regions. Okay, for example, mango, grapes, guava, water and crops. So like that, we need to identify the potential enterprises for various regions based on the comparative advantage, like rice in certain areas. Okay. Currently, India is the world's largest producer of many commodities, but in terms of export share, it is very, very negligible. Therefore, so this is the first. Second, we need to identify the institutions and infrastructure required to support this. For example, warehouses, processing, then value addition, etc. And we need to say what is called invest a lot on this logistics and branding, etc. And for many export this one or in order to promote these commodities, we need to provide solutions very quickly electronically. Digital solutions are very, very essential, and we need to revolutionize in this here. So we need to integrate this sector gradually to the global markets by digitalization. Then some of the novel or new approaches to promote or to stimulate the agriculture to capture the world market. So we need to extend precision farming over a large area in order to produce large commodities as well as quality wise. And we need to make use of big data analytics for precision decision making. That is very, very important. That is especially mapping of our resource base and what are the that means attributes of this resource to take up certain enterprises. And another very, very important is nurturing entrepreneurs to carry out innovations, and also encouraging the venture capitalists in agriculture is also equally important, what I feel. Then currently, as I said earlier, agriculture export constitute around 10% of the country's export, but the majority of the exports are low value, raw and semi-processed. Therefore, we are not able to tap the value. And here the share of India's high value and value added is less than 15%. That clearly indicate that huge scope for diversifying our export basket towards these high value commodities as well as the destinations also. Only see few countries we are focusing. We need to expand that direction of trade. Then so in order to do this, we need to say execute or implement the good management practices or promotion of good agriculture practices with quality assurance, infrastructure for pre and post harvest, integrating exporters with farmers. This is very important. And some of these export restrictions, all of a sudden now very recently they have stopped exporting of onion. Disturbs, in other words, this destabilizes. So that should not happen. So in that way, we need to maintain stability in export, and also in order to promote, we have to cut down some taxes and capture the growing market opportunity through integrated value chain improvement. That's what Professor Chengappa was all through insisting. And with this, we can exploit global opportunities and become the food basket of the world, as well as even the commercial commodities basket of the world. So with this, I think we need to focus more on export competitiveness, international quality, branding, good infrastructure. So with this, I think we can capture the markets.
Absolutely. So I think Dr. Nagaraj has specified in very critical, very significant bullet points in terms of what the focus areas are. Dr. Chengappa, if we can request you to share your final closing remarks in terms of what the key points are, what are the focus areas are for the sector, and then we can proceed towards closing the session also.
Yeah. Dave, I think, I reiterate what Nagaraj indicated, that India has all the potential to emerge as a global food basket. That is, we can really meet the requirement of the export market. But you see, for example, one thing I want to give a little a rational view, saying that The Indian agriculture is, has recorded a growth rate of 3%, which is being continued for the last decade. 3% growth in agriculture products. But our population is, growth rate is coming down. To be exact, it is 0.99 as of today. That means we are self-sufficient right now. You will have to produce, for markets elsewhere. Even if you keep the same growth rate, the analogy arrives, we cannot sell in the domestic market. That means we will have to produce for the overseas market. And, producing to the overseas market is not an easy task. So this has to be really thought, And moreover, for example, still there's a debate. For example, we produce 295 million tons of food grains. In fact, we have to shift from food grains to other crops. We have achieved food security. We are now moving towards nutrition security. So we will have to really look at the crops which can contribute to the nutritional security and bring down poverty and malnutrition. One thing. The second thing is, I'm tempted to quote Piyush Goyal, who was giving a lecture last Saturday at the Exim Bank. He mentioned, I'm tempted to quote him, I quote, there is no need to segregate between products for exports and domestic sector. We require quality and good technology and scale, though some support is needed at times from the government. I think, it is very clear we have to be quality conscious. Quality is the buzzword if you really want to be both in domestic and export market. Because you have seen there is a proportion of the Indian population who are really want for example the apples from America. Our apples are no way less, but you will have to see that we come out with those kind of things with good brands, the good presentation, etc. Well, I also just want to indicate that we need to enhance our competitiveness. Unless we produce at a competitive level, we cannot compete. Especially China is the biggest producer, the number one agricultural commodity in the world, and also USA. The statistics. If they produce the agricultural commodity, they can consume it for 12 years if it is to be for the same country. In fact, USA is the one country, where the most part of the agriculture is exported. And for that, they have a very strong, the market intelligence, market information and market intelligence network. This is where, our efforts are very less. We need to develop a important market, market news, market information, market intelligence, and market outlook, so that we can position ourselves in the emerging markets. And this requires a lot of investments, and also it requires a lot of participation from the private sector, because there's a lot of modeling has to be done. This is where I look forward that, we can move forward if you invest on this. And I again reiterate, our Indian farmers, though we always, I used to read the whole book of Dr. Memoria in my college days, saying that agricultural problems in India, they say the farmers are poor, his awareness is low, but he has proved otherwise. So capacity building of the farmers to get into the transforming market is also equally important. Don't underestimate our farmers. I really salute our farmers. Today, we are able to, our exports are more than the imports. That has been possible because of our farmers. If you invest more on the farmers, you'll be investing more on, marketing our commodities elsewhere, so that the country as a whole, we can gain. Lastly, I would say, a lot of policy support is required. The changing environment, if you really want to improve the domestic as well as the capture the markets elsewhere, a lot of policy support is required. For example, we have seen, I just wanted to, only 1 minute I will take, saying that we have this, forward trading in agricultural commodities. We have seen the multi-commodity exchange of India, etc. See, for example, we have to support for this futures trading in agricultural commodities. See, I want to use because I'm part of the Tata Group, I must say, I want to share the experience of the Tata Coffee. Tata Coffee has got 22,000 acres under coffee. And our analysis is, by producing coffee, we cannot make profit. But we have developed a very good value chain for coffee. For example, We are the biggest importers of coffee. We add value by making instant coffee and exporting it. We export more than 90% of our coffee, but we import Vietnam coffee because it's a cheaper rate. These are the models where we should get into the higher value chain. In fact, I conclude saying that we have to move from local to regional to national to global value chains for the benefit of the farmers as well as the country as a whole. I would say even my participants, there are a lot of opportunities for investment in agriculture, and that is possible because of the changing policy environment that is being seen now. So I'm positive about it.
Right. Value addition, that's a key. Yeah. And also, I think you mentioned, in addition to the soldier, and of course, during this time, the COVID warriors, the doctors and the health workers, and finally, the third person, who's a Kisan, the farmer, who has always stood up for the nation. And as you said, a big salute to the farmer of India. And they've sustained that growth in this sector, while other sectors have always been struggling. So big salute to the Indian farmer. We just maybe have a couple of minutes. Dr. Nagaraj, if you have your final closing remarks, any other significant points that you want to highlight?
Yeah. Thank you. In addition to what Professor Chengappa mentioned, so we need to improve the economic viability of smallholders. They represent about 80% of the total holdings. So for that, we need to move from output to income. So doubling farmers' income is one of the important area. So how we can do it? This one, that is a big challenge. We need to invest more on productivity, augmenting technologies, R&D, and also outreach. That is an important area. Then market, storage, infrastructure. These are all very, very important. Then we need to accelerate the shift to bio-based carbon footprint crops in order to address the environmental concerns. That is a very, very serious. Then we need to focus on diversifying export basket and also destination. That is another important area in order to capture the growing market opportunities. So we need to also develop an integrated good value chain and business model. And so finally, farmers need a safety net, a safety net. Otherwise, very difficult to thrive in terms of risk mitigating. So the market as well as monsoon, both are very important for a farmer. So without any safety net, we cannot improve this one to meet the targets. That is another thing. So ultimately, so in order to satisfy the nutritional requirement of the consumer and also income requirements of the farmers, the agriculture should really contribute a lot. And the last area, what I wanted to mention is unlock large opportunities through digital, informatics. So which has a very scope to provide automation in irrigation, then mechanical innovations, etc. This has to contribute for labor scarcity or to bring about use efficiency, also to address environmental concern. With this, I think, so my first concern is how to improve the economic viability of the smallholders so that they can concentrate more on high value crops. Thank you. Thank you,
Dr. Nagaraj. You touched upon the digital aspect of transformation. We don't have time we are almost at the end of the session. I would have liked that we take a few questions from the audience, but then we would reserve it. We can ask them to mail it to us. But I think one of the questions was, what is the role that TCS can play in the agriculture sector? So I think, as you highlighted now, Dr. Nagaraj, and earlier on, Dr. Chengappa also touched upon what role digital transformation or digital technologies like big data, analytics, and blockchain can play. And I think that's the key contribution that TCS can also help in the sector with our expertise. So I think we are completely out of time. Thanks so much, Dr. Chengappa and Dr. Nagaraj, for taking out your time and joining us on this program. We talked about the challenges in the sector, how the Indian farming, the agriculture sector economy can go and grab the world market, and with your knowledge, with your expertise, with your experience, I think you have given a whole lot of points, very valid input. So it was really a pleasure and an honor to have both of you on our program. Thank you very much once again for joining us, and thanks viewers also.